Welcome to Sports Love Media on YouTube. It's your guy Sports Love broadcasting live today, August 7th, 2025. Today we are going to go over Major League Baseball games, my perspective, and the games that we're going to look at today will take place tomorrow, August 8th, 2025. We also have games on Saturday, August 9th, and Sunday, August 10th. I'm going to go over who is playing in these games, who the starting pitchers are, and other pertinent information. And then I'll go through and list who I think is going to win the games. So, can y'all hear me out there in YouTube land? I'm going to give it just a minute for people to join in on the broadcast today before I get started today. So, hang tight. We'll get started here in just a moment. Alright, so let's go ahead and get started on this, shall we? For the games that will take place Friday, August 8th, 2025, which is tomorrow, you have Cincinnati versus Pittsburgh, 5:40 p.m., Chase Burns versus Mitch Keller. All times that I list will be in Central Time. You have Houston versus the New York Yankees, 6:05 p.m., Hunter Brown versus Cam Schlittler. You have the Athletics versus Baltimore, 6:05 p.m. JT Ginn versus Tomoyuki Sugano. You have Los Angeles Angels versus Detroit, 6:10 p.m. Kyle Hendricks versus Tariq Skubal. Let's see. You have Miami versus Atlanta, 6:15 p.m. Edward Cabrera versus Bryce Elder. You have Cleveland versus Chicago, 6:40 p.m. Tanner Bilby versus Aaron Saval. Let's see. You have Philadelphia versus Texas, 7:05 p.m. Christopher Sanchez versus Merrill Kelly. You have Kansas City versus Minnesota, 7:10 p.m. with Noah Cameron versus Joe Ryan. You have the New York Mets versus Milwaukee, 7:10 p.m. Kodai Senga versus Brandon Woodruff. Let's see. You have the Chicago Cubs versus St. Louis, 7:15 p.m. Matthew Boyd versus Michael McGreevy. You have Boston versus San Diego, 8:40 p.m. Walter Buehler versus Nick Pivetta. You have Colorado versus Arizona, 8:40 p.m. Austin Gomber versus Luis Castillo. You have Toronto versus the Los Angeles Dodgers, 9:10 p.m. Max Scherzer versus Clayton Kershaw. You have Washington versus San Francisco, 9:15 p.m. Jake Irvin versus Kai Wai Tang. Hello to you, Hello to you, Jan. I appreciate you joining me today. And hello to you. Thank you again for joining me today. We're going over Major League Baseball games that are taking place between tomorrow, August 8th of 2025, and Sunday, August 10th of 2025. Oh, okay, Zan. I appreciate that. Glad to have you in here, Zan. Anyway, I just went over who is playing on August 8th, and now I'm going to make my picks for who I think is going to win on the games on August 8th. Yes, it's in the daytime, and hello to you, Firebow. It's great to see you in here. So my picks for August 8th, I have Cincinnati defeating Pittsburgh. I have Houston defeating the New York Yankees. I have the Athletics defeating Baltimore. I have the Los Angeles Angels defeating Detroit. Miami defeats Atlanta. Cleveland defeats the Chicago White Sox. Philadelphia defeats Texas. Kansas City defeats Minnesota. New York Mets defeats Milwaukee. Chicago Cubs defeats St. Louis. Boston defeats San Diego. Colorado will defeat Arizona. Tampa Bay will defeat Seattle. Toronto will defeat the Los Angeles Dodgers. Washington defeats San Francisco. Well, I'm glad to see that you're in here from Indonesia. It is nice to know that people from all over the world come and join this. So, and I do appreciate you very much, more than you know. So, anyway, let's go on to the next day. We have August 9th. There's going to be a double header that day with Miami versus Atlanta, Houston versus Miami versus Atlanta. It will be a double header. It'll be Sandy Alcantara versus Eric Fed. The second game, I do not have the matchups for who will be the starting pitchers on that one. Also, for these games, I do not have the over-under and the money line, so I'll just go with what I have. We have Houston versus the New York Yankees, 1:05 p.m. Colton Gordon versus Lewis Gill. The Atlanta-Miami game is at 12:15 is when the first game starts, and then the second game will start sometime after that. You have Washington versus San Francisco, 3:05 p.m. Brad Lord versus Carson Wisenhunt. You have the Los Angeles Angels versus Detroit, 5:10 p.m. Jack Kokonowicz versus Charlie Morton. You have Cincinnati versus Pittsburgh, 5:40 p.m., which will be Nick Martinez versus Undecided. You have Cincinnati versus Pittsburgh. I just went over that. We have the Athletics versus Baltimore, 6:05 p.m. Jack Perkins versus Brandon Young. You have Cleveland versus the Chicago White Sox, 6:10 p.m. Joey Cantillo versus Sean Burke. Well, give me just a second. Let's see. You have Kansas City versus Minnesota, 6:10 p.m. Seth Lugo versus Bailey Ober. You have New York Mets versus Milwaukee, 6:10 p.m. Frankie Montas versus Logan Henderson. Again, the second game with Miami and Atlanta, apparently that game will take place at 6:15 p.m., but there's no mentioning of the starting pitching lineup. You have Chicago Cubs versus St. Louis, 6:15 p.m. Colin Ray versus Andre Paliante. You have Philadelphia versus Texas, 6:15 p.m. Jesus Luzardo versus Jacob deGrom. You have Colorado versus Arizona, 7:10 p.m. Bradley Blaylock versus Eduardo Rodriguez. Boston versus San Diego, 7:40 p.m. Lucas Giolito versus Dylan Cease. You have Toronto versus the Los Angeles Dodgers, 8:10 p.m. Chris Bassett versus Blake Snell. And you have Tampa Bay versus Seattle, 8:40 p.m. Joe Boyle versus Logan Evans. Basically what I'm doing is I'm going over the games for each of the days of Major League Baseball between August 8th and August 10th of this year, and I'm going over who's playing, the starting pitchers, any other pertinent information that I can find, and then I'm making my picks for who I think will win the said games on those days. That's basically what we're doing. Now that I've gone over the games for Saturday's games, August 9th, let's go over who I think is going to win. Thank you for saying that. Dreneb, thank you for saying that I'm a professional yapper. I do talk a lot about sports. I love sports. And yes, here we go. For the games on Saturday, August 9th, I have Atlanta defeating Miami in both of the games they're playing. I have Atlanta beating Miami in the 12:15 p.m. game. I have the New York Yankees defeating Houston. I have San Francisco defeats Washington. The Los Angeles Dodgers loses to Detroit. I have Pittsburgh defeating Cincinnati. Baltimore defeating the Athletics. Chicago White Sox defeating Cleveland. Minnesota defeats Kansas City. Milwaukee will defeat the New York Mets. Atlanta will defeat Miami in the second game at 6:15 p.m. that day. I have St. Louis defeating the Chicago Cubs. I have Texas defeating Philadelphia. I have Arizona defeating Colorado. San Diego defeats Boston. The Los Angeles Dodgers defeats Toronto, and Seattle defeats Tampa Bay. No, can you not hear me? Can you hear me a little better now? I'm sorry. It's not muted. And no, I don't show my face because I do better in just talking. So There we go. Let's see if that helps with the volume. So, all right, hang on. Let me try something here. Okay, so I got the Q&A. Yeah, I asked a question on the screen, and I want your opinion on that. So, anyway, let's see. I just went over who is playing on Saturday. Now I need to go over who's playing on Sunday, because we've just gone over who is going to win the games on Saturday. So, let's see. Can y'all hear me out there in YouTube land? Cool. I'm glad to know that you do like Major League Baseball. It is greatly appreciated on that. The question's going to stay up for anybody else that wants to answer. In the meantime, let's go over the games for Sunday, August 10th, 2025. You have Kansas City versus Minnesota, 12:05 p.m. With Bailey Falter versus Undecided. You have Cincinnati versus Pittsburgh, 12:35 p.m. Zach Littell versus Mike Burrows. You have Houston versus the New York Yankees, which will be Frambler Valdez versus Max Fried. You have Miami versus Atlanta, 12:35 p.m. Cal Quantrill versus Joey Wentz. The Athletics versus Baltimore, 12:35 p.m. Luis Severino versus Cade Povich. You have Los Angeles Angels versus Detroit, 12:40 p.m. Yusei Kikuchi versus Casey Mize. Let's see. You have Cleveland versus the Chicago White Sox, 1:10 p.m. Slade Ciccone, whatever, versus Davis Martin. You have the New York Mets versus Milwaukee, 1:10 p.m. Sean Manaea versus Quinn Priester. You have Philadelphia versus Texas, 1:35 p.m. Zach Wheeler versus Patrick Corbin. You have Washington versus San Francisco, 3:05 p.m. Mackenzie Gore versus Justin Verlander. You have Boston versus San Diego, 3:10 p.m. Brayan Bello versus Undecided. You have Colorado versus Arizona, 3:10 p.m. Tanner Gordon versus Brandon Pfaadt. You have Tampa Bay versus Seattle, 3:10 p.m. Adrian Hauser versus Brian Wu. Let's see. You have Toronto versus the Los Angeles Dodgers, 3:10 p.m. Eric Lauer versus Yoshinobu Yamamoto. And you have the Chicago Cubs versus St. Louis, 6 p.m. Shota Imanaga versus Sonny Gray. To answer your question, I'm from a community in North Alabama in the southern part of the United States. That's where I'm from. Hello, FBI. I appreciate you for joining me today. So, let's make my picks for Sunday's games. I have Kansas City defeating Minnesota, Pittsburgh defeating Cincinnati, Houston defeating the New York Yankees, Miami defeating Atlanta, the Baltimore defeating the Athletics, the Los Angeles Angels defeats Detroit, Chicago defeats Cleveland, New York Mets defeats Milwaukee, let's see, Philadelphia defeats Texas, San Francisco defeats Washington, Boston defeats San Diego. Hello. I'm sorry about that. Okay, and I have Chicago and St. Louis. So, no, my mouth's not tired yet, and I'm sorry I got cut off there for just a second, but it's all good now. All right, so let's review what we've got so far. So I've gone over who I thought was going to win the games on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, August 8th through 10th, and I'll just go ahead and review those real quick. For August 8th, I have Cincinnati defeating Pittsburgh, Houston defeats the New York Yankees, the Athletics defeating Baltimore, Los Angeles Angels defeats Detroit, Miami defeats Atlanta, Cleveland defeats the Chicago White Sox, Philadelphia to defeat Texas, Kansas City will defeat Minnesota, The New York Mets will defeat Milwaukee. Chicago Cubs defeat St. Louis. Boston will defeat San Diego. Colorado defeats Arizona. Tampa Bay defeats Seattle. Toronto defeats the Los Angeles Angels. Washington defeats San Francisco. For Saturday, August 9th, Atlanta will defeat Miami in the 12:15 p.m. game as part of their first of the two doubleheader games. The New York Yankees will defeat Houston. San Francisco defeats Washington. Detroit defeats the Los Angeles Angels. Pittsburgh defeats Cincinnati. Baltimore will defeat the Athletics. Chicago White Sox will defeat Cleveland. Minnesota will defeat Kansas City. Milwaukee will defeat the New York Mets. Atlanta will win to Miami in the second game of the doubleheader that day at 6:15 p.m. St. Louis will defeat the Chicago Cubs. Texas will defeat Philadelphia. Let's see. Arizona will defeat Colorado. San Diego defeats Boston. Los Angeles Dodgers defeats Toronto. And Seattle defeats Tampa Bay. So, okay, sorry if I talk too much, but, you don't have to stay in here if you don't like what you're hearing. I mean, that is an option, but we are discussing sports, and we're talking baseball right now. So, for the games on Sunday, August 10th, I have Kansas City defeating Minnesota. Pittsburgh defeats Cincinnati. Houston defeats the New York Yankees. Atlanta defeats Miami. Athletics defeats Baltimore. Detroit defeats Los Angeles Angels. Cleveland defeats the Chicago White Sox. Milwaukee defeats the New York Mets. Philadelphia defeats Texas. San Francisco defeats Washington. San Diego defeats Boston. Colorado defeats Arizona. Seattle will defeat Tampa Bay. Toronto defeats the Los Angeles Dodgers. And St. Louis will defeat the Chicago Cubs. There you have it. That is the Major League Baseball games for Friday, August 8th, 2025 through August 10th of 2025, which will be on Sunday. Here on Sports Live Media, we are going to be doing some things a little different. Starting next week, we will be starting a college football live stream where we will go over the Associated Press poll or AP poll top 25. We'll then go over the top 25 matchups for each and every week of college football season with each week. We will then look at the over-under, and we'll look at the point spread regarding each team. I will then logically explain my reasoning on who I think will win those games and why, and I'll go into a lot more detail than I do with some of the other stuff. We will start that live stream next week. I believe that will be on Tuesday that we will have that. The live streams will be on Tuesdays of each week, with the exception of the first two live streams. The first one will take place on Tuesday, and because week one is a little longer than than all the other weeks when it comes to college football, there will be a 1 week gap before we resume that, but we will be doing that for each and every game that is going on during college football season. We'll cover the regular season, we'll cover the postseason, we'll cover the championship, conference championship events, and we'll do the bowl games. Each of those games will take place on a weekly basis, and we'll have a live stream going over that stuff. Also, everything is going to be branded with Sports Live Media on YouTube and on Twitter. Thank you again for tuning into this broadcast today. I do greatly appreciate each and every one of you. If you will, please hit the like button. Please hit the notification button. Please hit the share button. So that way you can be made aware of when I'm broadcasting live, when I have breaking news in the sports world, when I have sports updates, when I do sports action videos, when I have sports education videos. If you wish to subscribe to my channel, there are two ways to do it. One, you can go to www.youtube.com, the slash symbol, the at symbol, SPORTSLOV. The second way is go in the YouTube search tab and type in Sports Live Media, SPORTSLOV, one word, and then media, MEDIA, in the search tab. You'll know it's me because I'll have Sports Live Media burned into a basketball as my avatar. I am also on Twitter X, and my handle is Sportslove Media on Twitter X, but you can find me through Twitter X with the @ symbol BOBAMIN16. That's at BobAmin16 on Twitter. We're also going to continue to do these Major League Baseball live streams at least once a week through the end of September, but there won't be as many baseball live streams as there has been in the past, but we're going to try to do one at least once every week regarding the games on the weekend, since most people watch the Major League Baseball games on the weekend. So, anyway, we're also looking to do an NFL-based live stream. I'm not sure when we'll be doing those, but we will be doing those each and every week, and I'll have more details regarding the NFL football live streams that we will do. I'll have more details on that when it does become available. So there will be other live streams that will go on as appropriate outside of what I've already told you, but then again, I'll make the announcement when we have those available. Again, thank you again for tuning in to this live broadcast today regarding Major League Baseball and other things. Does anybody have any questions, comments? So, if not, thank you again for tuning in to the broadcast today. I hope each and every one of you have a wonderful day. Sportslove Media signing out.